So like most half-baked ecclesial ideas, church has left the building was born out of a conversation over a few too many beers and codified on the back of a paper napkin. I'd been at Essex Center United Methodist Church for about 3 years, and just to let you know where we're at, we're in the backyard of Vermont's only megachurch, the Essex Alliance. So there's a feeling of being like a small mammal during the Jurassic period, where large beasts roam the world. When I first got there, the lay leader said that they had 2 goals. They wanted to deepen their spirituality, and they wanted to make a difference in the community. And we spent the first couple of years on the first part, revamping worship, multiplying small groups from 1 to 4, trying with varying degrees of success to make prayer and testimony a part of every church meeting and class and gathering. The church doesn't have a formal mission statement or vision statement, but some of the leadership adopted this as their kind of operating philosophy. Don't just go to church, be the church. And that meant being the church outside of worship, outside of the small groups, and certainly outside of administrative meetings. Does the UCC and the Episcopal Church have those? It's just Methodists have gone on to perfection with that. And that grew to maybe the church ought to be outside. What about leaving the building? So doing a little research on the net, I found that church has left the building has been done by a lot of churches all over the country. The beer brainstorm was trying to find a regular but not overly regular schedule for it, so it didn't feel like it was a one-time project, but also didn't get super scheduled and, oh, we do this all the time and too much. It needed to satisfy my ADHD, and so we decided that a 5th Sunday, doing churches left the building on a 5th Sunday would mean that it would be either 4 or 5 times a year. You never knew quite which month it was going to happen, a little bit random. And so we planned our first one for the last Sunday of August in 2010. By the way, my operating philosophy as we began it comes from Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. Do you remember what hers was? I forgot what it was. I don't even, I'm sorry, I've totally lost my everything. Take chances, make mistakes, get messy. And we did a little bit of all of that. The most important part of the planning was, what are we going to do? And that meant people looking around and asking, what are the needs in the neighborhood? What are the needs in the community? What are the needs of the surrounding area? And so this was the meanest thing we did. We asked people to be observant and inquisitive and maybe even nosy for a couple of months to find out what was needed around them. We ended up with 6 projects on the docket for the first time. First was to build a porch and a ramp on a mobile home of a woman in Westford, cutting up a tree that had fallen on a parishioner's home, painting the bathroom of a woman in Colchester. We had parents with little kids set up to do a cleanup hike around the Indian Brook Reservoir, and the older folks signed on to visit with shut-ins. At worship, we took the left the building part seriously. We actually did not go inside the church. We had about 25 people show up the first day. We gathered out front. We sang a couple of hymns. We read Matthew 25. We shared some prayers, and we headed out. brought lots of chainsaws and axes and stuff. We went to the fallen tree on the parishioner's home. We built a porch and a ramp. This is some of our folks in process of that. Don't ever do that with the drill. We sealed a few leaks in the roof. People did not take pictures of the painting and the cleanup and the visitation, so we don't have any of those. But we also met afterwards for a lunch to kind of share stories, and had a really wonderful time. So we thought we'd do it again. Doing it as an experiment gives one a lot of permission, as our previous speaker said. So we gathered it again a few months later. A little bit later in the fall at our next one. We almost always had a construction project to do. We seem to specialize in building mobile home porches and stairs. This was another one we did. Another crew went to Camp Dream to help them close down for the winter. That involved painting, and that involved grounds crew, and that involved apparently junior Scottish Highlands games. And keeping the little ones entertained. Over the next few iterations, we got connected to some pre-existing ministries in the area, like the Chittenden Emergency Food Shelf, with Habitat for Humanity, with Camp Dream. And we gathered together to evaluate what worked, what didn't work, and make changes that needed to happen. It was the next winter of our, when we had our fifth Sunday, that we kind of had an issue. We did not have a lot of projects coming up as we were planning for it. There's not a lot of construction that you do in the winter. The meal sites only needed a handful of folks, so okay, that's a dozen of us. And there's no way to involve the kids. So we needed to do some more homework. And what came up that worked really, really well was we got connected to a Lutheran associated group. It's now under the umbrella called Outreach. I think the name now, it's changed its name a few times. I think it's New England Against Hunger. But what we do is we gather folk to assemble meal packages that are high protein meals, usually macaroni and cheese or chili kind of thing, and it's got high protein, it's got vitamins, all sorts of good stuff. And we broke our rules. We didn't leave the building because it was winter, and we had people sign up, and everyone stayed after church. It was pretty cool. The first year, well, not everybody, but half the people stayed. We had the first year we had 40 people stay after church and assembled 5,000 meals. You can see giant piles of macaroni there. And it just goes down the assembly line. What was brilliant about this was that you could have folks of a certain age, and you could have folks of a certain age, and folks of a different certain age. And even little guys can actually do practical work. This is where you assemble them before boxing them, and the little kids could pile them up, and they weren't just underfoot, they weren't just being in the way, they were actually being a part of it, and it was terrific. Come spring, we were able to get back outside, and so we were able to be participating in habitat builds on Fifth Sunday. Some of you may recognize Mr. McCosco there. We were still able to bring folk out to the meal sites that we were signed up for in Burlington. That's not the meal site. That's the meal site. This year, the dearest project, I think, for us was this last year. The Burlington Free Press ran an article about a woman living in a shed in Elmore. And an older woman in the congregation read the article, and it resonated with her growing up in the Depression and how her family had been helped. Her family survived with help from neighbors, and she decided that we should be her neighbors. This is the picture from the Burlington Free Press. When we went to the place, this is what it looked like. We did 3 Churches Left the Building iterations at her place, putting on a new roof, a new floor, new interior, and again, even little kids can stack firewood taller than themselves. A couple things that we've changed, and this is kind of the what I guess if there's anything to give to y'all is, if you want to start a project like this and it's an experiment, use the scientific method. And if things don't work, change the variables. Change it, evolve. We found after a few iterations that people who didn't have a ministry to do that day weren't coming to worship. Also, when it was winter outside, worship outside was, well, miserable and cold and horrible. So we started worshiping indoors again, and we actually started doing a full worship again, even though it kind of went against my philosophy of churches left the building. In reality, worship with a hammer is awesome, but some folks can't worship with a hammer. And so we gave everyone an opportunity to worship with heart and soul and mind and strength and voice. And then those who could, afterwards, could go out and worship with the hammer later. We had people put down their favorite ministries that they had done on fifth Sundays over the course of the last 2 years. And this word cloud became a big sign at the front of the sanctuary. It was very meaningful for folks. I guess if there was any changes in the congregation, is that mission and outward focus was no longer an extra thing you did. It was the main reason why we were there. After worship, it was to go outside into the world and make a difference. And this is crucial, is people learned how to talk about why they did what they did. Having a relationship with Jesus is what sends us out. St. Francis said, preach always, if necessary, use words. Ryan Gackenheimer, a wise saint, said, in Vermont, sometimes it's necessary to use words, because lots of folk in Vermont do good stuff, but we do it because we follow the rabbi from Nazareth. So, did we magically bring in new young people and families because of Fifth Sunday? Actually, yes. We did bring in children. When we were doing the meal assembly each year, we were advertising on Front Porch Forum and on Facebook, and people came. Some of them stayed. I wanted to share one piece by a young woman who started coming to church and stayed because her churches left the building. She said, Churches Left the Building was one of the best experiences I've ever had in a church community. Here was an opportunity to get my feet wet, test the waters, and see what volunteering is all about. Best of all, there was no awkwardness. I was working with my friends, my new church family, so even in a stranger's house, I felt at home. The first day was a special occasion because we were a group of people going out into the world with a common goal. Churches Left the Building provided one of those rare moments where you can see how one little action ripples through the world and makes it just a little bit better. I hope that we have more opportunities like this, more chances to pass on that ripple of hope, love, friendship, and unity toward a better world. So, thanks.